Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance into this incredible platform dialogue between the new Untouchables. This is our 32nd episode. And we have a special guest this morning, and we are recording on Thursday, August 7th at approximately 9:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we might call it day, who knows how many, of the Trump RICO presidency and all things that have led us to really incredibly important actions that are going to be taken by the folks on this particular podcast. And I'm going to do some quick introductions, but set the table given all of the mayhem that we're in the midst of. And to my immediate left is Mark Dan, former Attorney General of the state of Ohio, and in private practice. Immediately below him, Paul Peltier, formerly at the Department of Justice, 3 decades in the Department of Justice, and an adjunct professor at George Washington University, as well as in private practice. Below him, William K. Black, a gentleman with more accolades than I can speak to at the moment, but for those of you who have been paying attention to these know exactly who he is. And please like, subscribe, and share to everyone else that is just discovering this for the first time. Immediately below me is June Carbone, the Rabina Chair of Law, Science, and Technology at the University of Minnesota. And then joining us today for the first time on this dialogue is Lewis Clark, the Executive Director and the CEO of the Government Accountability Project, and he has been there since 1978. And it will become clear why he's on here to discuss these incredible situations. But I'm going to use the goings on of all things Epstein as an introduction as to why this is so incredibly important. So, the nature of whistleblowers as it relates to all things Epstein story is suddenly in stark contrast, given the incredible cover up that we're seeing from the Trump administration and everything that's coming through with the press corps, all things, let's say, Todd Blanche and the goings on of what is going on with Ghislaine Maxwell and whatever information she may have and impart and how that plays out politically. But what's really intriguing and really, shall we say, frustrating is in context to all of the media sort of reaction to all things Epstein at the moment. There were whistleblowers that were trying to get attention to this story 20 years ago. There were witnesses and, shall we say, victims that were trying to get the story to the New York Times, the mainstream press, all over the place, and they were being ignored. And yet now, 20 years later, when it's a political hot potato and maybe the only thing that's created a fissure in all things MAGA, do we have, shall we say, focus on the real stories that connect what mainstream media failed to give us years ago, long before, obviously, everything that took place with Epstein when he was in prison during the Trump's first administration. So, on that note, I think I want to start with you, Paul, from this perspective. You've given us so much introspection by way of Towers Financial, by way of some of the forensic questions of all things that would enable this Epstein scenario. And I'm curious, as a former prosecutor at the Department of Justice, how important is it to have inside information from whistleblowers who were part of the situation from the beginning?
Well, we know, and we've talked on this podcast many times about how vital whistleblowers are. But the reality of the situation is, because they help make the case, and what whistleblowers are people who can walk you through and be eyewitnesses to the crime, so to speak. And so they're vital and they're essential. But the reality is, good prosecutors, good agents will both create whistleblowers and create eyewitnesses. What do I mean by that? If you're doing your job as a prosecutor, if you're doing your job as a federal agent, you're forcing people to recognize through your investigation that they may or may not have criminal liability and that they need to, in fact, relieve themselves of that criminal liability by cooperating with you. So it's a very important dance that has to be done by adept prosecutors and agents, but you don't have to necessarily wait for someone to come in, is my only point, and be a whistleblower. In this case, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Epstein case, have dropped the ball for decades on Epstein. And you look at yourself and you say, is it through ineptitude or is there something else going on out there? And I think it's probably a combination of multiple things, but on every level, both when the state attorney's office couldn't get the prosecutor's office to, excuse me, when the state investigators couldn't get the state prosecutor's office to prosecute Epstein, they brought it federally, and they had it boxed up on a silver platter. They had multiple child victims, and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office dropped the ball there. And then they brought the case up to New York finally, and they really dropped the ball there because they had a very myopic view of the case, and they didn't look at it as broadly as it could be to bring all the people to bear. So yes, whistleblowers are important, but you don't have to sit around as a prosecutor agent and wait for a whistleblower to knock on your door. You see the crime, you start investigating, and you make things happen.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, but I think that's a big part of what we've all seen this conundrum with the Supreme Court, of course, in Pam Bondi's Department of Justice is, okay, well, who's going to fund the investigations, particularly all things that are happening, not Epstein right now? Just imagine what's going on. And that brings me to you, Louis. I mean, Louis, let's set the table. You've been at the apex of the Government Accountability Project since 1978. I experienced firsthand a dinner in Washington, D.C., where you guys rolled out kind of a who's who of some of the top whistleblowers in the history of your efforts that were extraordinary. The stories that you guys have access to and the revelations impact literally tens of millions of Americans. And here we are in the situation where just recently you guys were working with a whistleblower by the name of Erez Ruveneri, if I've pronounced his name correctly, as it relates to the case involving Emile Beauvais. And it's like we were the first to, I mean, like 2 weeks before mainstream media was talking about it here on this podcast, when Bill Black brought it to our attention. Can you set the table for what the Government Accountability Project is? And from your perspective, given the moment, the importance of what you guys are doing and what you're in the midst of?
Yeah, well, we're in the midst of an avalanche of opportunity and need in terms of the number of whistleblowers who are coming forward about the current illegality, which is sort of the way of life here in Washington. But to get back to the statement that was, the discussion that was just had, is that the prosecutors doing their jobs is absolutely invaluable. And if they are having impact, if they are doing their jobs, they will get whistleblowers. Whistleblowers will come forward if they understand that they'll make a difference. What we do at the Government Accountability Project is we, of course, represent them in terms of their personnel matters. If they get fired, we represent them very much as any attorneys would do. But secondly, is what we do is we investigate what they have to say. We substantiate what they have to say, and then we work with them with their evidence to try to make a difference and try to create reform coming out of their revelations. And then, of course, we work on legislation as well, so that there are laws that will protect them through that process. But the whistleblowers have there's two sort of major reasons they might not come forward. One is fear, and the fear level with whistleblowers these days is through the roof. So there's fear. And secondly is futility, is that they will come forward, but nothing's going to happen. It's very much like the victims too in the Epstein case. They have fear, they come forward, and then nothing happens. And there's nothing that's nothing that's more terrifying than these people coming forward and then finding that they're let down by officialdom and it's for naught. But as long as whistleblowers have the impact, they will come forward. And as long as we as an organization can see that they have impact, more and more people will come to us and to other people who are doing work similar to what we're doing.
And Patrick, if I can add to that, That is absolutely what Mr. Clark just said is absolutely true. And when you have whistleblowers coming out of private industry as opposed to government, they know that they are going to be poison in that industry from that day forward. They will never get another job in that industry. So unless that they can feel confident that someone's going to do something with their information, again, they're never going to be employable, but they want to have the confidence that someone is going to take that information that they have and use it to prosecute other people. They're really doing it for the most part because they're good citizens, good corporate citizens. And if they don't feel confidence that the prosecutors or the agents are going to do their job, then they're not going to come forward. So it is symbiotic in that relationship.
Absolutely. And of course, I'm sorry.
No. Well, no, I just want to make the point that I don't know if it's written down in Project 2025 or not, but there is a systematic effort by the administration to create a level of fear and uncertainty among potential whistleblowers in the administration. And look, at the end of the day, government employees also have families to feed and careers to protect. I think they have done a really masterful job of both removing the sense of any kind of success on whistleblowing, as well as to raise the fear level because and by making examples of person after person that have stepped forward, and through eliminating the inspectors general, but through we have a couple of pending key tam cases, false claims cases. I have no confidence, and I can't tell clients who come in my door anymore that I have full confidence that if there's merit to their claim, that the Justice Department's going to take it up, because I think that there's as good a chance that whoever is being the target of that False Claims Act will simply buy their way out through the corruption of the open corruption of the Trump administration. So the all the traditional analysis of this, it has to be tempered by the fact that these folks are ahead of, just like with so many other aspects of the second Trump term, they're so far ahead of the good guys in thinking this through that we need to really and how to attack that is a question I do not have an answer to.
And sorry to step on you, Patrick, but
Yeah.
we should understand. I hope Mr. Clark can explain this. When you have government whistleblowers, particularly the Department of Justice, the most important entity to protect those whistleblowers is the Office of Special Counsel. And in that Office of Special Counsel that Trump has ravaged, and we started to talk about this last week, the nominee to be the head of the Office of Special Counsel his name was withdrawn. He was 20-something years old, and he's an anti-whistleblower guy. And I would hope Mr. Clark could help during this conversation tell us how important the Office of Special Counsel is in the department to protect whistleblowers.
Yeah, it's really within the federal government. There are inspector general offices, which, as we know, have been gutted, or at least their heads have been chopped off. And then we have the special counsel. We had in Mr. Dellinger, we had one of the best special counsels we ever had. What that office does is it investigates what the whistleblower has to say. It forces the agency to respond to all the allegations. And if the Office of Special Counsel is not happy with the investigation that the agency does, then they have the power to force another investigation, and also to take the matter directly to Congress, as well as certainly to the President of the United States. And in other administrations, they might have a president that would listen to these concerns. But then in addition to that, it has the power to force agencies to take the whistleblower back as the case is adjudicated, so that whistleblower will continue to have a job. And it also has the ability to essentially force the agency to take the whistleblower back through their processes. So it's really a lifeline, life-saving line out to whistleblowers within the federal government. We don't agree with their decisions all the time, but it is the best thing that we have going for us. And it's been in operation since 1978.
I want to just lean in here to kind of set the table and tee this up for you, both June and Bill, to get in here. But my sort of reflection of what everybody's talking about was as a producer of the con that brought everybody together on this particular podcast. And what I had learned was suddenly I'm looking at these whistleblowers with high level information, such as Richard Bowen, such as Michael Winston, such as Gary and others. As I learned about this stuff, but as Bill was walking us through the importance of, for example, the nature of criminal referrals and how the process works and how the investigations start to stem, the threat to their careers is profound. When someone comes forward with the truth that exposes these massive crimes, as Paul said, it destroys their career. Everything is on the line. Their education, their families, everything that they've done, and the consequences are enormous. So it takes incredible courage to be able to speak truth to power. I know we say this and it sounds like platitudes, but it's absolutely the truth. And if you don't have that process, the system can't do what it's supposed to do. And Bill, you've laid out this platform, this initiative that's the fight platform, but also to restore the integrity of the law. But whistleblowers play a huge part of this. Can you address both the, obviously the consequences, the fear, but also why it's so invaluable to be able to get this information? How do you do it now, given the corruption of the Department of Justice?
Sure. A massive topic, a series of topics. But to start with what you just said and to tie it with one of Paul's observations, right? It isn't just rhetoric that your career in the industry ends when you blow the whistle. So Richard Bowen and Michael Winston were very senior people with stellar records in banking for decades, who were proven absolutely right and had their warnings, which they didn't become whistleblowers immediately, right? They did what exactly they were supposed to do. They went up the executive chain and said, here are the terrible problems. Here are the illegal acts that the Citicorp and Countrywide, respectively, are producing. And these were two of the largest felons in the great financial crisis, right? And their bosses didn't simply fail to act. They lied and they retaliated. And to Paul's point, so these are two folks with stellar records for decades who are proven absolutely correct, who did everything they were told they should do in terms of internal reporting. Had they been listened to, each of them would have saved hundreds of millions of dollars, and in Citi's case, billions of dollars. So you might think that would lead, once all this came out, to all kinds of offers for senior positions. Let's take like Wells Fargo, which was in scandal after scandal and was trying to convince people that it had turned the leaf, right? And it was now ethical and moral and all those good things. Well, they could have signaled that behavior and made that signal incredibly credible by hiring either of the two major whistleblowers you mentioned. And they never did. Richard and Michael were completely unable to get another job in banking. Tom Frank, the great writer that you've interviewed as well, for example, asked me soon after the Obama being elected the first time, what senior position I was going to get in the government. And 5 minutes later, when I was able to stop laughing, I had to explain to him that I would never be employable again in the U.S. government because I had blown the whistle and because I had proven correct. Okay, so and other people get worse reactions. Paul has mentioned the scandal, a series of scandals by the Department of Justice and the FBI in the treatment of the girls. Let's remember, girls, not women, in the Epstein case, who came forward eventually and provided all this critical information. I believe, Paul, that they were actually referred to in the government pleadings as prostitutes, and that the crime that Epstein was, not contesting was essentially facilitating and participating in
prostitution.
Now, girls can't be prostitutes. They are children. They do not have the requisite ability to be prostitutes. And they are the obvious victims. But this is how insane the world is about the people that testify to this kind of abuse. It isn't just that you are ignored. It isn't just that you will never work again in the industry. Your own government that is supposed to be protecting you smears you and chooses the interests of the powerful over your interests. It is staggeringly shameful. And so, yes, just very briefly, Patrick, America has great advantages. We have more whistleblowers than the rest of the world combined. We have more high-level whistleblowers, which I've started to explain, and Paul has been explaining how critical it is. They know everything. They know where all the documents are. They know documents that they think that, the bosses think have been disappeared, but they have copies of the documents. And that's devastating, because then you do in the civil context, I'll talk, you do this discovery demand. They say there's no such documents, and then you produce them. And you could do a variant of this, obviously, in the criminal case as well, although the defense will know in advance of the trial that this is coming because of different rules on the criminal side. But it'll be catastrophic. They will not be able to take the stand because of that degree of perjury, and they'll get all kinds of sanctions personally as lawyers and such. So yes, these folks who come forward and keep coming forward, having seen what happened to prior whistleblowers, are among the glory of the United States of America. And we can put them together with some of the best attorneys in the United States, and we can use the state attorney generals. And because we are a federalist system, there are still states that could hold legislative hearings and subpoena witnesses, which for technical reasons we've explained is very important. So our strategy is very, very heavy on using whistleblowers who have already come forward and actually getting, some value for them and for society simultaneously. And that would the complete opposite of how many of us were treated as whistleblowers. And, I'm a serial whistleblower as well as an academic that studies this stuff as well. So it's quite personal to me. And, I was molested as a child by a church youth minister and such. And I was lucky. My parents intervened quite early, but I had no clue. I was a little kid of what was going on. So this again hits me particularly strong, that our government to this day has been outrageous in the treatment of the children who are victimized by Epstein. And this campaign to take this perpetrator, not just a co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, and to now valorize her on the right and say that she's the victim of a rapacious prosecutorial effort, is the cherry on the obscenity of this Sunday.
June.
Yeah, yes, I want to add to that. When you look at the victims, one of the things when all of this started coming out, I've been wondering, where are Trump's victims? And the answer, not Epstein's victims, Trump's victims. And the answer is that they did come out in 2016. A number of women, like E. Jean Carroll and Stacey Williams, came out in 2016 and started to describe Trump's sexual improprieties. They were vilified. And one of the things we don't pay attention to is the way Trump calls on his army. And the same way they stormed the Capitol on January 6th, they went after women who said they had been abused by Donald Trump. They found themselves, their families, their names released in the press. Trump routinely does that. Their homes, various things happened, harassment. Now, take that and apply it to child sex victims who feel shame. And if they were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, they went through a period where they were first groomed and then weren't protesting, they were going along with it. And as adults, they are deeply traumatized by this. One of the reasons the Me Too movement was so powerful is there are years of women being sexually harassed or abused by powerful men with no redress, who are not believed, who are vilified. And you don't have more people coming forward who have not already been in the press because of the reaction that it triggers. We interviewed a lawyer in the last book I wrote who said, the amazing thing is watching convictions of somebody like Harvey Weinstein on the basis of the kind of testimony that would simply have been dismissed as unbelievable a few years earlier. You are not seeing, with respect to this kind of sexual trafficking, that same large number of people coming out of the woodwork and saying, me too. And the reason you're not is that is so much harder than a government whistleblower because the victims are traumatized by the experience. Now, let me note only on government whistleblowers, as somebody who follows a lot of this, the one area the Supreme Court has been pretty good. It chose not to gut the whistleblower laws in the same way it has in lots of other areas I could talk about.
Well, June, I want to follow up with that because you are a veteran of the Department of Justice, but you had offered in our first Substack essay, the subject is honor and integrity, restoring honor and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a message you can send to whistleblowers who are on the fence for, obviously the terrifying prospect of losing their job, speaking out, doing the right thing, because obviously if they're ignored or nothing comes forward, they try to do the right thing with zero consequences.
Yeah, so what I think we need a far more collective response to this. I mean, if you look at people who had the temerity to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 election, you have people in the FBI who have been fired or who have been charged with misconduct. I mean, we have fear right now that people will face criminal prosecution for trumped up charges. Pun not so intended, but it's appropriate. if you look at what's happening in Los Angeles, they're trying to charge people where ICE arrested American citizens and the American citizens protested, and ICE charged them with assault of an officer. And where there is video, you have grand juries refusing to indict in those cases in Los Angeles. This is systemic abuse of people who have simply stood up for themselves in a context where ICE is acting unlawfully. Now, what's the right response? We need to be getting legal representation to those folks and offering a degree of protection. When a prosecutor goes in and tries to get somebody to be a witness, they have resources available to protect their witnesses. Now, most of us don't want to go into whistleblower protection programs of the kind that prosecutors have used in mob cases, but we ought to be thinking in those terms when dealing with this administration. So yes, we need to do the right thing, but the Me Too movement was powerful because it was like a phalanx of women and our supporters embracing victims who had the temerity to accuse powerful men. That's what we need.
Mark, you are in the midst of a lawsuit against one of the most powerful families in the state of Ohio, the Haslams, who own the Cleveland Browns. And you had discovered that they had been stealing found money that were lost funds, in the state of Ohio to be able to fund an extension for a NFL stadium. Right now, this kind of fits in with all of these things. How important would it be in your efforts to find a whistleblower that would be able to provide this information, and what sort of repercussions would they be facing?
Well, yeah, it's a little different than you characterize it. So we're suing the state over their what we believe to be their unconstitutional taking of people's unclaimed funds money to give to billionaire Jimmy Haslam to build a covered dome stadium in Cleveland. Actually, it's outside of Cleveland. It's in Brook Park, which is a whole separate issue. But both inside the legislature, where this kind of middle of the night insertion to the state budget came about, having staffers who could speak to that as a whistleblower with protection, and inside the Haslam organization, because what we know publicly is that they made very documented contributions to the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, a campaign to stop reform of gerrymandering in Ohio, of millions of several $1 million that we can document. But of course, with all the secret political action committees that are out there and the dark money, God knows how much else that they contributed, and where you could draw a very clear quid pro quo between those contributions. I mean, if it's only about $600,000 that they spent to get 6 million, I mean, that's a hell of an investment for those guys. But it's not, I think, what people of Ohio want or expect, and if there's a quid pro quo there, it's not legal. Now, the Supreme Court has worn down that distinction between the two, and they're looking to take other cases that might even wear it down further. But that's it's just a mini version of what's going on at the federal level with the pay to play or the pay to go away, which is the bigger problem with the Trump administration corruption that's going on.
If they're going to steal that much money, why don't they get themselves a quarterback?
Yeah, well, I'd rather them. Yeah, exactly. If they wanted to steal citizens' money to pay for a better quarterback, I might be less likely to sue next time. But so far that hasn't worked out. So.
Paul, from your perspective, looking here at Lewis and what they've done the whole time, I mean, being outside of the Department of Justice now, can you kind of characterize, what you would like to see moving forward, and like some of the things based on what Bill has set forth? What's it going to take to turn the tables on this machine that is so deep with billionaire commitment to the Trump administration that it could literally, I guess, blackmail whomever is in the Department of Justice or the FBI and so on and so forth through these methodologies where they seem like they've got it all locked down, Paul.
So it's, and again, Mr. Clark, well, I'd love to hear his opinion on this, but it's going to take a change of administration, essentially. But the work that everybody here has been talking about in terms of providing counsel to whistleblowers and encouraging is vitally important. What we do know for a fact is that when whistleblowers are used properly, it can create a ripple effect amongst both either the industry or the whatever environment that they're whistleblowing in. Perfect example. Two examples. One, we just heard Bill give us an example of how not using appropriately the whistleblowers in the great financial crisis, in effect, depressed the ability of people to be willing to cooperate and to bring prosecutions in that industry. Right? Didn't happen. Right? But let's go back to the Enron crisis, which came after the banking savings and loan crisis. Who started that? A whistleblower. All those accounting fraud scandals were exposed, and I would say patient zero was Sherry Watkins, who was a VP of corporate finance or something at Enron. She came forward, and like Bill said, she went up the chain. Nobody did anything, and she was used appropriately by prosecutors, and it created a ripple effect in the industry. It took down Enron, and it started down the path of all the corporate accounting fraud scandals that were going on. So these whistleblowers are vitally important. I would say that because of her cooperation and her whistleblowing, it exposed these accounting fraud scandals that resulted in literally thousands of executives going to jail. So it is important to create the ripple effect. But this administration, we've talked about the Office of Special Counsel. It's my understanding that they're weaponizing the Office of Special Counsel now to go after people within the Department of Justice. Namely, I believe, if I'm not correct, and maybe Mr. Clark can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're the office that's going after Jack Smith and investigating him in Florida for this. I'm sure it's some type of Hatch Act violation, but at the end of the day, they're weaponizing these very institutions and these very organizations within the government that are supposed to protect whistleblowers. So we are completely backwards, and I think it's crazy.
I think that the example of Eris Rovini, who has recently blown the whistle on the top levels of the Department of Justice, deciding that they were going to say "F you" to the courts, and he came forward and has revealed that there are 3 different federal judges that the Department of Justice decided to mislead and lie to, and he himself was fired because he refused to say Mr. Garcia, who had been wrongfully sent to El Salvador, to the gulag in El Salvador, that was a mistake. He told the court that was a mistake. He should not have been sent to El Salvador. And as a result of that, the president himself criticized him. And of course, Bondi did as well as Stephen Miller. And they fired him for having come forward to the court. Because he's an officer of the court. I think that in terms of the Department of Justice, we have scores of whistleblowers who are in our offices now, who are intending not to go along with these kind of absolutely corrupt prosecutions. The facts and the facts are the facts. They're not going to, the special counsel is not going to do anything in terms of this investigation because it's filled with people in that office who have given their entire careers to actually going after corruption. So they're not going to follow along with what this investigation of Jack Smith, in my opinion. In addition to that, the Civil Rights Office or Division of the Department of Justice is going to have trouble using that office to go after universities for so-called discrimination. And, that's current, those investigations are going forward, but the facts are not going to be there to be able to sustain those attempts, in my opinion, to go after educational institutions, as long as the institutions stand up and fight back. If they don't fight back, then then that's a whole nother story. But the Department of Justice is filled with people who are right now in open rebellion against what's going on within the agency.
Yeah, but I want to say that yeah, I agree that they're not likely to be successful, particularly in the Jack Smith case. But you understand, obviously, that just being under investigation, if it doesn't go, it is grueling for the person who's under investigation. So you can't
absolutely, you're absolutely right, and they still have to get an attorney. They still have to pay tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect themselves. And you're probably right. It's going to take another administration to get out from under the kind of incredible lawlessness that has become the Department of Justice.
But this fits in
under this leadership.
Sorry.
Well, and to that point, Mr. Clark, you've got an all-star list of folks here on this call that have been doing this for decades, right? And so they offer resources. How can we, in addition to their expertise, on top of the rollout that Bill has levied, that we're in the process of moving forward, but what can I do, ideally, in addition to what you have, by way of its media, to get to the American people these stories of unbelievable corruption within the institutions that are there to work for the people, not for Donald Trump. And ultimately, for us to have a change of administration, it's going to come from the tens of millions of people who get these truths. What, in the ideal way, would you formulate this sort of effort, this collective effort?
Well, certainly, public education. For sure. I mean, it's absolutely true that it's like you can lie like hell, and that disinformation is going to be halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on, to fight back. I mean, because if you're really devoted to the truth and the evidence, then you have to. It took us almost 3 months to prepare, Eris's 27-page disclosure to the Inspector General, to the Special Counsel, as well as the Senate Judiciary Committee, because we had to go over every line, because he is a lawyer representing the American people, certainly representing the Department of Justice or agencies of the government, and he's going to be potentially challenged in terms of his bar license for revealing information that came out of the representation that he's giving to the client. And so you have that hurdle. But public education is absolutely invaluable. In addition to that, we need pro bono counsel like crazy. There are so many people that need representation. And so anyone who can in any way volunteer and to participate in the protection of these folks throughout the government. Right now, there are a number of people at the Department of Justice who are blowing the whistle, usually as confidentially as they can. In addition to that, what's about to happen as the government ceases to function effectively, and that's across the entire government, when it ceases to actually function effectively, there is going to be an avalanche of new whistleblowing. It's already happening, and so these people need representation and they need help in any way that people can offer that help. We have 60 interns in our office during any particular year. We have 500 that volunteer that want to help. And so there's a groundswell of people that wanting to participate and help. And this is what it's going to take. It's going to take an army of resistance to the illegal officialdom that is occurring and that we're all facing throughout the government and throughout our country.
And that's why this group exists. It's new Untouchables. Go ahead. Who was talking?
No, Louis. I just wanted to tell you, we've got 12 lawyers here. I'm admitted in DC. Let us know how we can help.
Absolutely, we will be in touch today.
I love that. Well, in addition, so I know that we're finishing up on our time. Paul, you gotta go to a meeting. Obviously, Mark, you do as well. I just want to give the floor here to Bill to close us out here based on what Louis, and I'm sure you got to leave too, but we got 3 minutes.
Okay, so I just wanted to say something I know Paul knows, but what he was talking about in terms of the enormous cost of simply being investigated, that was the old days. Yes, that continues. But this administration is completely different. This administration doesn't just have an investigation. It has the President of the United States and the top Justice Department officials announce you're guilty, which is in complete violation of all Department of Justice procedures. So it isn't just the investigative costs anymore. It is a full-fledged effort to smear and destroy. And they will pronounce you guilty. The last thing they want is a trial where you have rights and where you can force them to testify under oath, because then they'll either perjure themselves or both, or lose. Probably they'll do both. So that's not what they want, is the hearing. They want to announce an investigation, and they announce at the same date they supposedly start the investigation, indeed before often, that you're guilty. And they do it from a prominent person, and it is played by the media as if this was some kind of normal thing, right? So now they are trying to supercharge their ability to destroy whistleblowers. And that's just the beginning, right? If they find any peccadillo of a whistleblower, they're going to seek to prosecute them criminally. It'll probably have nothing to do with their whistleblowing, but they did, something on a tax return that 6 years ago type of thing. So that's what they're looking to do. And we need to reverse this. And our fight strategy and restore democracy strategy are use this, indeed, from our standpoint, supercharge the ability of the whistleblowers to get their message to a vastly greater audience and in a coherent way where they get to tell the story of their life and the abuses. And that storytelling is how you actually convince people to change, right? And the best lawyers, and I'm sure Mark has a number of them, that's what we do. We don't just present a bunch of facts. As trial lawyers, we tell a story. And we have a superb story because the whistleblowers are the bravest and the best among us, this current crew of whistleblowers. And God bless them and those that work like Louis and his organization, who've been in the weeds for decades, as you say, trying to make all of this possible. And again, as a whistleblower, I can only give my personal thanks to all of his efforts and his organization.
Thank you so much.
And the viewers out there, please like, subscribe, and share. Like, our democracy and our lives depend on it, because it does. You've got to supercharge everybody to know that the new Untouchables exist, that the Government Accountability Project exists, that we have to together get the truth out there. over this veil of this propaganda that has completely befuddled what we all thought was a democracy of liberty and justice for all. On that note, I'm Patrick Lovell. Please check out the con at thecon.tv, the new untouchables.com. And thank you for everybody for joining this morning. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.